Chapter 4. Faust. The bright rays of the sun were heating the city to temperatures that were no longer considered friendly by Vita. She very much would have liked to remove her robe, but didn't dare until she got outside the city. Even despite the heat of the day, the bright blooms and the greenery that thrived on every building brought out what felt like the whole population. Bodies were smushed together as people plowed through the culture. She blinked up at the passage the milling people were about to divert her down and sighed. She felt like a fly trapped in molasses. The clogged, pulsating veins of the city streets took her where they needed to go in no hurry. And she was happy she had added the "or so" addendum to her message. The stream of people spat her out on a side street 2 blocks over from where she needed to leave what used to be the safety of civilization's walls. The blank stone entrances bringing only a few stragglers needing a break from the crowd. She rounded the last block and proceeded up the massively oversized gray wall that had Aphthonia carved straight through, legible best when approaching the city. This was the westernmost gate and had her oriented towards the rolling forested hills of the wilds. Vita stepped through the gate and was met by a blast of fresh, cool air that sent goosebumps of relief cascading from her head to her toe. She dropped her hood and took a long breath in before walking up the path until she met a big rock. There she disrobed, shoving the garment in her bag, then found the rabbit trail that led up to the rendezvous. Nothing out here was kept up. People rarely traveled here, so she felt safe knowing she and Faust could have a moment alone to talk. The meeting spot was another mile or so up and through the trees. She began to organize her thoughts in matters of importance, getting lost in her head to not notice the snap of a branch behind her. As it swung back naturally from the momentum of her walk, a hand wrapped around her left wrist. It twisted her arm up behind her back, and before she could react, another arm wrapped around her front and covered her mouth. Pins and needles screamed through her body, and her back legs went up, only to be caught by knees in a derisive laugh. "I thought I taught you better than that," Faust's grumble met her ears. She felt like she had been doused in a bucket of water. He released her and walked above her, putting his hands on his hips, only to give her the world's ugliest glare. "That's not funny, especially after the day I've been having," she seethed at him. They both continued towards their meeting space, their tones scaring away any fauna that might be around. "Who said I was trying to be funny? I know that I taught you to be better about guarding yourself in certain surroundings." "What happened?" he implored. "It's been a day," she exclaimed and threw her hands up into the air. "Are you currently tech-free? Please." She put her hands out in front of her in a pleading motion. "Just don't call me paranoid. I'm more than positive I'm being followed, and I would rather be safe than sorry right now." "So that's the point of all this." Faust waved his hand around the wild sanctuary. "I followed my own protocol. How do I know you're not bugged and looking to get information from me?" The buff, graying old man puffed his chest out. The look he received in return was defiant disbelief. Vita squinted her eyes, then softened them, her thick brows withdrawing as she laughed. "That's fair," she replied. They each took a moment to go through and over each other to make sure nothing could still possibly be connected to the system. Once they had both satisfied their paranoia, they each gave each other a long, warm embrace. "What happened, kiddo?" Faust asked, kissing the top of her head and using his term of endearment. They parted to look at each other better. "Does the name Talbot mean anything to you?" She broke from his grip, watching his face to see where she needed to start with him. He loved to pay attention to current political spin, and that name gave him momentary pause. "You're gonna have to narrow that down a bit." "But possibly?" he responded, walking in front of her, continuing towards their original destination. "Walk and talk." It wasn't a question, but a statement, followed by a hand signal forward, up the tall hill. "Talbot Trent," she tried. Faust stopped in his tracks, while Vita took an absent-minded step and ran right into him. She rubbed her eyes as they carried onward. "How could I not?" His tone dripped with disgust. "What's he got to do with this?" He sounded concerned. "Everything," she summed up, waving her arms around like a conductor dramatically ending a crescendo. "That's bad," he stated flatly. They walked in heavy silence to the top of the densely wooded hill and found the cluster of rocks overlooking the black and green valley that made a great seat. This area had been a bombing site almost 200 years prior, and the blackness from human-made toxins still marred the landscape. The dark patches were just beginning to fade, but still, no life seemed to make it to the impact sites. Vita had nicknamed this spot the Queen's Foyer as a teen because she felt that the remaining blackened areas looked similar enough to a chessboard. She took a seat opposite of Faust, who had pulled out trail mix and water, the last of which he offered to her. She accepted. "So you have given me a name, but you have not explained what happened." His crystal blue eyes stared down at her imploringly. It was as if all the strength she had exhibited through the day left her body. She deflated a bit and then began to sob. Through choked tears, she listed what had occurred that morning. Faust sometimes had to stop her and ask her to repeat herself so he could understand a word she had mangled. After he understood the basics of the day, she pulled out the tomo and the chip that had the precious information stored on it that Dr. Varethi's robot had left to her. With a huff, she proffered the knowledge to him. Vita sniffled and cleared her throat, feeling worn out but better. Faust's lips were stuck in a thin line as he accepted the device and tapped open the first of the files. She felt worn from the lack of sleep and sheer amount of upheaval in her day. She could tell Faust was engrossed and would be a while. She pulled her bag close, fished the robe back out, and lightly bundled it around herself. She pulled her bag beneath her head and promptly fell asleep. The older man read through every article, watched every video, and prepped in silence as he let his adopted daughter sleep. He had no good news to give her after watching that train wreck of an occurrence. He wondered how much she had seen. As her guardian, he knew her background and knew what kind of torment this news could have for her well-being. Not only that, Talbot was not a person to be messed with. Faust didn't know how Vita could return within the city borders without the politician knowing. It would take a highly specialized individual to get into the system and upload a new identity for her. The crime syndicates in town that he knew were not that advanced. He started trying to accumulate any and all knowledge that might be useful to them while he started to forage around the area for any known edibles they could prepare and eat while they discussed an action plan. He made sure not to get out of sight of Vita, just in case. Talbot had gone after her boss aggressively and had pursued her as well. Faust was sure if she had not fallen back on their preparedness, she wouldn't have made it this far. Talbot had a lot of pluck to try and murder someone. It was no easy task in a world that watched and documented every move of every citizen. It suggested the politician had some kind of connection to the security network or some way to bypass it. Faust looked up to see two squirms chittering and chasing each other around a small cluster of trees, running on four legs like little ninjas, then hopping around and flying every so often, free to muck about their world as they saw fit. A grouping of ferns popped up from the base of the nearest tree they had launched themselves from. It was a delicious, edible type, and he grabbed a few that would pair well with the eggs from the large, unattended nest in the thick bough above. He retrieved 3 speckled cream-colored eggs the size of his fist and tucked them tenderly into his large cargo pockets on the side of his pants. When he got down from the nest site and noticed a type of edible mushroom on a nursery log next to the tree, Faust gave each mushroom a quick tap, allowing the large spiders and beetles to scurry from their homes before he pocketed them too. He figured that was plenty to keep them going for a while and turned back to his sleeping charge. Faust was almost back to their spot when he noticed a small batch of ramps. He bent to pick one and noticed a small metallic orb with a red light floating up the rabbit trail that had brought them here. It stopped, dropped, clung to the ground, and another followed in its place, dropping about 3 feet from the previous device. A chill ran down his spine as he realized what was going on and they needed to leave. As calm as he could, he went back to Vita. He again slipped a hand over her mouth, but this time the urgency in his eyes put her in tune with the situation. She started to jolt up, then calmed as her eyes followed his hand to his lips in a quiet gesture to keep her silent. Faust then pointed to the line of robots that was quickly approaching. He used both hands to indicate they should stay low and leave. They did a quick sweep to make sure they left no trace, and both scuttled off into a denser part of the forest with a less obvious trail. Once they were a safe distance from the machinery, Faust found himself barking orders. "I didn't want to alarm you, but we're going to need to run for a bit." "Where?" Vita's voice caught as her ankle got caught and slightly twisted on a root. "A safe place I won't name now. Just trust that I know where I'm going," said the man who had kindly listened to her problems and left the safety of his home to be chased into the woods with her. He needed no help in gaining her trust. Faust had come to her rescue so many times before, she was beginning to wonder why he had bothered chasing after her. Vita wanted to cry out in frustration, but everything in Faust's body language and own hushed, direct tones suggested that doing so would end badly. She took a moment to jitter and shake up and down in place, then cracked her neck from side to side, then followed behind her dad, an easy jog through the wilderness, away from the red blinking robots inching ever closer. It then struck Vita that she had not seen this man so enthusiastic about anything in such a long time. In fact, as they weaved quickly through the trees, she could swear she saw the usual grump of a man actually smile twice. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to Chapter 4 of Shattering Red. I do apologize that my cat was yelling at the beginning of this episode, but sometimes it's like that. Tamlin says hi. If you've liked what you heard so far, please be sure to like and subscribe, follow my channel to make sure that you get updated on the next chapter that comes out. And if you do like the book so far, please be sure to check out any online major retail bookseller, and it should be available there. Thanks so much. I hope you have a wonderful day or night, depending on when you're listening to this. Take care.